Doing?
I am doing well.
That's amazing.
Everything's going pretty good over here.
It's been like, how long has it been since we've talked?
So it's been a month,
Awesome. So it's literally,
and
just so you know, this is like the first session I've recorded in like 2 weeks.
awesome.
Yeah, I've been
You
so
get
busy
to write your
writing.
book.
I know.
That's awesome.
It is. So this will be great. I have
Yes.
something to post. So tell me, let's start with just like body image. How you feel about the body? Are you constraining it? Are you fixated on it? Any limitations?
Um, no, actually, the odd thing that happened to me since we talked last, of course, I went through my whole blissed out phase, which just kind of got normal. So I haven't been any obsessions about food, and I have a normal schedule. I just eat or whatever. But I did start getting some like muscle fatigue and some different like hot and cold flashes. I'm like, and I'm having a bit of a hard time. Like if I work out, I'll feel like wiped out for a while. So I'm not sure if there's something that I might have to go get checked out or whatever.
Well, there's a lot you have to think about, like with exercise. How intense is your exercise? Are you, you have to really look at being tired is a natural aspect if you aren't accustomed to working out. So there may be nothing wrong, just that the body needs enough repetition to acclimate.
It'll be like 3 days or something. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. But I decided to buy one of those rebounders, which I heard like help develop stamina or
fun, and they're fun.
Whatever. Just to like maybe start doing more things at home instead of trying to get through a class, a super energetic class. Because then, once the adrenaline starts going, or like it's like a Zumba or whatever, so you're having fun in the moment, and then it takes like 3 days, and like this just doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I've noticed a few symptoms with my body, which I thought was kind of ironic, the timing of it all, but like, oh well, I don't know. Maybe I'll get tested, or maybe I'll just not.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I should go see some bodies, but
yeah.
But besides that, I eat fruit, Robin, with no guilt.
How's that
whatsoever.
feel? Have you noticed?
Love it.
So let's describe that to the listener here. So but prior to would eat fruit, there would be, I've done something wrong.
Yes.
So there would,
like an
it would like,
anxiety
and it would take over it would take over your mind. It would take over your thoughts. So the freedom to just, so one of the things I remember fantasizing about when I was in the throes of my mental illness, eating disorder, was that food took over everything. Was it good? Was it bad? How much should I eat? If I ate something that wasn't regulated or was quote unquote bad, it would take over my mind. And I would have to do something about it to just get the idea that I could be free. So
I feel like it's like a mental record that starts playing, like everything whoever ever told you about fruit, it's like the rerun. So you think about fruit, and it's like the brain puts this record on, and then you're like,
you're going to have high blood sugar, and then you're going to have like high triglycerides, and then you're going to actually store fat, and then you're not going to be burning fat. Oh my gosh, that is the fear mongering. That is the downside of the fear mongering.
That's the trendy train that came to town.
It does, but it really is, your sensitivity to it is the fact that you thought it was truth, that you gave it credibility. So that's why it kind of, the brain latched onto it. This is true. It's dangerous. I shouldn't eat that. It is a terrible, horrible thing. And what's amazing is once that happens, it feels like you'll never recover from that, right? But the only way to recover from it is to remove the credibility from that threat. It's not a credible threat. So,
which for me, especially with fruit, it's like, well, look at all. I mean, if I was an attorney, in like a food court or something, I could speak on the validity of fruit. It's like fruit is. So I think in my mind, I was just like, no, fruit is good.
Yeah.
You guys
well, if it sounds good to you,
go with your trendy trend.
Well, what it is it's actually what they're projecting out is that fight or flight response that is triggered by the fear of food. So you can have compassion for those people actually, number one, believing that information and sharing that information. Because if food was your biggest threat, like food was going to kill you and it was like the bear in the room and you had to be you would be paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
If you really believed the food I eat is going to kill me, make my life miserable, and or is the source of the body fat that I'm trying to rid myself of, it's like a pariah. And so if food is the source of the pariah, can you see why you would have this kind of magnified, it's like wearing, goggles that magnify everything. And anytime food is around, food is magnified into your vision, right? And so when you hear that stuff, what I see are people with those goggles on. Oh my God, it's going to kill you. And that is a symptom. I've been there. That's how I can describe it and actually go, oh, it feels like this. It feels like the only thing you see in the room is the food. And it's not just the fear of food, but food is always on your mind. So whether you're an anorexic or a binge eater, it's the same, big eye.
Right.
All you see is food. Yeah. Food takes over everything. I remember too fantasizing and just seeing no one else cares about what they ate. It was, I was in such a distorted and twisted view of food. It was so magnified in its importance. I recalled just really envying people who didn't have that. They get to just eat and they get to have their life. Like, think about all the stuff they're getting to do, but not me. I am honed in on food as if it is life and death. And for me, it will kill me, but it won't kill them. That's that kind of when you become relatively aware that this is my issue. It's like I'm addicted, but really it's what is distorting your awareness to where food is end all be all you think about. It's so important. It's the body image issues you're holding, right? So the person listening, how did you do that? How did you undistort your view to where you can eat fruit and it makes no impact on your mind? Like, you go on with your day. You don't have threat. You hear the brainwashing dialogue. And that's funny. Yeah. You can hear it and go, yeah, whatever, because it's funny now, right? But prior to it, regulated your entire day, your mood, everything, your reactions to it. I mean, you would have to either binge, purge, exercise. I mean, everything was devoted to how you respond to eating that fruit. So when we look at how did you get rid of that magnifying glass vision? It's like, well, we got rid of the body image underneath it all. Right. You had to be willing.
The body image was, of course, key.
Yes, because you had to be willing.
That's like, I don't even care about that anymore. And then after that, I just feel that science takes things out of context or whatever.
It's in a vacuum.
There's no real reason to believe it because of the way that they do theirs. And besides the fact that there's like investors and all these whatever.
Well, yes.
So
with that type of like
what's going on. But I was like, you know what? It's not valid.
So here's the thing.
I kind of got out of that. I was like,
okay, let me help you for a second. Because hold on, just let me help you for a second.
Yeah.
Science isn't wrong. It's the way it's manipulated to promote a single way of thinking. Because the science ultimately is looking at it in a vacuum. That's how most science works. Like they don't like the science of, let's just say, food addiction. Whereas, like, are you saying that the science that shows the brain lit up compared to someone who's not addicted and their brain response is false? No, we're not. We're just saying it's not showing you that the person whose brain lit up has been a chronic dieter. They feel shame when they eat that food. This person doesn't diet and doesn't feel any shame. Period.
Right.
There's no context. So that's what you're saying, that there's no context around that outcome.
They've discovered everything about the body. They almost make it sound like they've gotten it all figured out. But anybody who's ever had any sort of chronic illness will know that's not true.
No, and it is. So the technology is changing, and it's all getting
if you need
shoehorned.
Surgery, it's good, but
it's all getting shoehorned into some pharmaceutical concept. The idea around the disease model, which is getting dismantled. Anyway, so when it comes to the diet industry, you have to look at, is this credible? The diet industry, is it credible?
It's not credible.
Yeah, sure.
Especially if the people who are purporting the things are selling a product. So
or selling a restriction. Selling the diet is still a mechanism, right?
So they're not giving you this information on the goodness of their heart.
Well, they're giving it to you because they may have those goggle eyes on. Right?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
goggle
Not saying
lenses
that they're trying to do it. Although I think they might like the profit they're getting, but...
Well, of course. And they actually think, I can make money and sell the goodness of my orthorexia, too.
Right.
Because I want followers, and there's something I get out of all these people doing what I say.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of started to see that and realize that you really can't just believe it just based on that. So.
Well, and let's just imagine it's all true. Let's just imagine it's true. Compare your sense of well-being now versus then.
Yeah.
Are you okay going back to that way of thinking for safety?
Never.
Right? Yeah. Wouldn't you rather be unsafe?
Yeah.
Me too. Wouldn't you rather have high triglycerides?
Sure.
Yeah. Wouldn't you rather have diabetes?
Right.
Me too. Because at least I will have freedom of the mind. I have the freedom of the life I have. I have freedom to not just live it, but to create it. When you're stuck in that survival mode, there is no freedom to create. You are held hostage to the need to defend yourself. And that's, really meant and preserved for when the bear is actually chasing you. That's when it would be appropriate. But you're living in that.
But we live in
chronically.
A first world country. Right.
Correct. And you're living as if your life is continuously being threatened by food. Even though, and the mechanisms in your brain that have taken millennia to evolve are to get food. So you're surrounded by food that's threatening, but yet at the same time, your brain is wired to feel safe and secure with food. So it's like you're basically taking the brain and warping it into, again, massively magnified, not just in terms of what's bad, but what you want. So the binge eating aspect of it is hardwired into your nature. So the orthorexics and anorexics that actually can remove food are isolating themselves because they have to isolate their human nature from nature. Yeah. And that's ultimately what it requires. And the sucky part about it is if you go out into nature with this issue with food, you're going to binge. You're going to feel bad about yourself. You're going to have to do something to fix it. So it becomes this war zone. And it feels like war zone. So you end up having social anxiety, panic attacks. You become enraged and almost angered when you eat something that is bad for you because you have to do something about it. So anyways, going back to this, like, Robin, I ate fruit and I felt nothing.
Yes, I do a big bowl of fruit salad with all kinds of fruit.
Isn't that delicious?
In one big bowl.
Do you find that when you just allow yourself the freedom without I shouldn't do that, I should remove this, I shouldn't, and you just allow the body to regulate it, that you don't always eat fruit all the time. That there's moments where you're like, oh my God, that sounds so good. And then there's other times it's like, yeah, no, too acidic. My mouth is like, I'd rather have cheese. Oh my God, cheese. It's so horrible. Like, can I tell you what's so bad about it? Dairy. Anyways, and some people may have dairy issues, but you don't necessarily feel that same catastrophe.
Yeah.
Or religious morality around, I don't eat dairy. Dairy is terrible for you. It's like, well...
And it's like, if you're aging and maybe just cheese doesn't do well, it's like being able to just accept it or whatever without it being a catastrophe either way.
Or the morality around cheese is bad.
The morality, like, oh, I don't do cheese.
Yeah, see, it's so different, It is. It's
because when you're not in it, you don't feel like this supremacy either. So after you, I feel like, heal, it's like, you don't all of a sudden become.
No, and that's what I meant. Right? And you don't necessarily feel like you need to proselytize like you would have with a diet.
Right.
I need everybody to know, and I'm going to try to convince everybody to do this. You really don't. Because you can see this is such a personal, like a spiritual growth thing. It's like you had to go through what you needed to go through. You needed to suffer doing what you were told to the point where you had to let it go. And not everybody has suffered. And actually, if you bring this up, you're going to look like a weirdo. Like, how are you okay? Just be content with your body fat? People would look at you like you were crazy. Because it's so indoctrinated into our culture to worship thinnerness, right? That thin supremacy.
And there's a lack of compassion in our culture for pretty much everything, because it seems like a lot of times issues can be triggered by maybe some event that happened, kind of thing, that all of a sudden makes, a person, maybe their heart feels broken, or their trust got destroyed. There's some kind of thing that happened, and then it snowballs into the survival
some type of coping mechanism. Yeah, I know that was the case for me. That was the case for me.
Yeah, so getting back then to having the compassion, so people never look at that. So then if you see somebody who's struggling or whatever.
Yeah, you can see this is not about, it may be manifesting as a sense of self-righteousness, or they're promoting a narcissistic concept, but they're really just trying to feel better about something that they perceived as a victim. Yeah. So totally. Like for me, I could see the eating disorder actually made sense. It was, it was like, well, no shit, you're going to do that. That makes total sense. That's not what's wrong. Your coping mechanism is would make sense in relation to the experience and how I perceived it. And those perceptions were based on my religious indoctrination, right? So because I was the religious indoctrination had no compassion, right? So you can see if underneath it all, the belief system you're holding, it doesn't have to be a religious belief system. It can be, it can just be something your parents taught you from just their beliefs about what life should be like. If there's no grace or compassion in that belief, and you internalize that belief, chances are you're not going to have self-compassion either, because you're holding on to a structured concept. Again, that's like the science that is in a vacuum. There is no reality or context to how someone would respond to sexual abuse.
Right.
If it was black and white, sex is bad, you have to be married, then having the encounter of sex is going to be bad if you're not married. So there's no context to anything.
Right.
And that's where we have to, in order to recover, you have to have compassion. You have to kind of let go of those rules and have self-compassion, because the rules don't necessarily have those built in. They're not built in.
That's where you get, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I was going to say, that's where you get the compassion for whatever size you are. So you're just like, my body's we've been through a lot together. We've been learning together, and, this is where we are. And Even if maybe a disease or some sort of mystery illness or something gets brought on, it's like, well, that's where we're at.
Can I accept it? So, and that doesn't mean that you don't get medical treatment. It just means that if you can accept it, then the medical treatment is like the bonus. This is actually really awesome, because this is what I was reading, and what the chapter I'm writing is about, is perception of what life is. And the perception starting with the body, starting with that, witness that we are from within, right? That the body we just get to be a witness. We haven't done anything. To claim it as our witness would be claiming the body, its evolution, claiming what we're witnessing as our own. It's very that's the core of the ego, right?
Yeah.
It's very subjective versus objective. This is very important, because I think it's a way to describe this. What objective is is witnessing what it is as what it is, the truth of what it is, right? Versus subjective is bias. Subjective is, this is what I perceive it to be, right? It's creating a personal attachment to what you're observing. So when we look at the body objectively, it's a body. It's breathing for you. You do nothing. It does it naturally. Eyes are working. It's an objective thing. Versus subjective would be a projection of what you think it should be onto it, right? It's conceptualized. Yeah. So when you look at thin supremacy, or just being thinner supremacy, you don't have to be thin, the thinner supremacy, that's very subjectively biased, and then putting that onto the body changes how you perceive it. So what we did essentially with the body image is we removed the subjective belief patterns, and you had to be open to witness it objectively. And that means you have to be open to the truth of its body fat. Right? So once you do that, then the issues with food just naturally unwind. That twisted, magnified view of food untwists naturally, because you're no longer trying to force a subjective viewpoint of the body. Which is amazing, because the viewpoint of the body is so fixated on the body that you don't really get the freedom to live openly that you think you're going to get. Because you're living fixated on the body, as if the body provides that. The conditions of the body provide freedom. So you're fixated on the conditions, not the freedom. That's why when you lose weight, you don't get the freedom. You think you're all of a sudden your mind will relax and open forward. That's not what happens. It stays focused in on the conditions. So you don't get freedom. You get the conditions. That's the subjective life you wanted. Therefore, you get the subject. You don't get the objective freedom that you think you'll get when you lose weight. Because that would require you stop looking at the the limits that you want from the body. You know what does that make sense?
It does. And to me, it's not like let's say you desire, a particular aesthetic or whatever for the body. But what's like the reality?
Yeah, what's within reach?
That you've been, possibly bumped and bruised in life for quite a while, and maybe this is the body you have, and then if it is or isn't going to get to whatever that aesthetic is you desire is kind of not important necessarily.
No, you don't hold on to it. You're not latched onto it.
I suppose, but
no, you're right, because how this translates into reality is, it doesn't mean just because you accept the body as it is that you don't get medical help, that you don't go buy glasses, that you don't get LASIK, right? It just means that you've accepted the worst case scenario. That allows you the freedom to witness and almost like experiment with what the opportunities could be. So this is how someone who gets leg amputation, right? Maybe at the knee, they have to sit in a wheelchair. So they're grateful for the wheelchair. So then they become grateful for the fact that they might get, prosthetics. right? This is like someone who's accepted blindness, but there might be an opportunity with a procedure or eye implants that they could potentially see. So if they've accepted blindness, they're not dependent or pausing their entire life until they see. Does that make sense?
Right.
So by accepting the objective truth, it depressurizes your life from having to be put on hold or paused. One of the examples I use in the book that will be published soon is that example of blindness. Did I go through that with you?
Yeah,
so different.
I like that.
Like when you are blind and there's no opportunity for different, it's like all of a sudden those subjective like limits just melt away. And all of a sudden you just accept the life that the body is providing you. You know, it's like it gives you these receptive awarenesses that allow you to see the beach without sight. You know, the smells, the scents, you have all of that reception. It becomes about witnessing life, where in comparison, there's someone who is perfect sight, perfect hearing, who feels bad about their weight. Basically, it becomes about your weight, not about the ocean. And people think when I lose weight, I will enjoy the ocean. Well, actually, that's not what happens. When you lose weight, you're fixated on your weight and body as if it is self-centered. Your weight is the life or the experience of the beach. Or right versus the beach. It's still internally focused, self-centered versus observant of, because you're focused on the limits. You're focused on the conditions of the body, not the conditions of the beach.
Yeah.
Right?
I like that a lot. And the way I kind of look at it is like, instead of identifying with the body so much, you identify with that part of you that's more spiritual, that's witnessing this experience, the part of you that's like eternal. And this is like your current experience that you're witnessing, that you're maybe working through or whatever. And then I like how you take it into, obviously, then you can enjoy the experience as well and not become fixated on this like blade of grass.
Well, and
in the whole scheme of things, I guess, but
that's true. Well, or becoming, so here's reality as it's occurring, and the idea is that you can to some degree accept it and manipulate it. Like if I want to climb a mountain, I have the opportunity to climb that mountain. I don't have to sit back and just do nothing. If I am a paraplegic, or let's just say I use the example of Dr. Stephen Hawking, the scientist that had Lou Gehrig's disease, recently died. He had absolutely zero. He had just enough to move his, he had a computer speak for him. He couldn't eat. He couldn't do anything, right? His whole body just laid in his wheelchair. He had just enough to move the wheelchair, right? But yet his mind was so open to witness and to create life without a body, essentially, without the physical ability of the body. He was capable of creating a productive life through the mind, through the openness to witness and to explore through the mind versus explore through the body. Right? The only way to do that is to accept the objective truth and to remove the subjective idea of what you think should happen. So the subjective idea creates a complete and total limit to the reality of all infinite possibility that is there. Right? So
that's interesting. Yeah, and it's definitely, it just feels like on a personal level for me, like it's kind of weird that this is happening right now. I don't know if it's like being called to, I guess, release another layer of everything. Because I was like, well, am I going to, I guess I'm going to be fine. I think it'll be fine. And then I'm like, well, doctors don't know anything about chronic illness. So if I go to a doctor, they're probably going to I'm just going to get in this weird routine. But of course I should go to the doctor.
Well, you could go but accept it for what it is first. Whatever this is, it is what it is. So if there's something that makes it better, awesome. This is how I've treated my back with all of my with all of the disc issues, multiple. So it's like, okay, if I can live with this, or make it better through, let's just say, the effort of yoga, how much effort am I willing to put towards it? Well, I've accepted it as it is. So what that means is I'm still happy with my life. I'm not negative and victimized by the fact that I have chronic pain that not only is in my spine, but in my hip sockets, So I can still go to yoga. I went and got injections. I'm going to try to save the money to get this, platelet-rich plasma put in, and injected. At some point, maybe I'll consider spine surgery. I don't know, but my life isn't limited because I've accepted it. Yeah. It really comes down to adaptation, accepting and adaptation. So in terms of you feeling lethargic or tired, start with, okay, this could be aging. This could be not enough sleep. Just think of all of the dynamic possibilities that are occurring here. Yeah. So with that said, does this mean you shouldn't go get blood test? No, go get a blood test. You don't have to. If there is something that you find out, well then awesome, you have a choice. Is it worth it if someone says you have to do this and this and this and this and this and this, and your whole entire life is now fixated on what you have to do, which you now have the choice around, is it worth it, or should I just accept where I'm at so that I can continuously have at least some freedom?
Right, exactly.
So an example of this would be Helen Keller, who taught herself how to speak even though she can't hear by actually studying the mouth of someone, studying the tongue, and taught herself, with blindness and deafness, how to speak, without having any, so for whatever reason, it was worth it for her to have the ability to communicate. Right. So, and once she had that, so what is it worth? What is it worth? How much life are you willing to sacrifice to have what you think you need? Right. So there's that balance, where at least what I've come to understand for myself is accepting the worst case scenario gives me the freedom to then adjust. If I can't accept it, that means that I have to fix what it is before I can live my life. Yeah. And I have expectations. So, because non-acceptance requires that you have something you think in mind that you are not, that you're in relatively rejecting the truth by.
Yes.
Right? So I am not willing, this is unacceptable. Okay, well then everything is put on hold. Right. There's benefit to some degree to that. That's how people produce, that's how people to some degree are, they're obsessed over a specific solution. That obsessiveness for some people can provide innovation. But that innovation comes at the risk of the fact that you're never happy, so they might be highly innovative, but they're also super depressed, because they're not open to witnessing life the way it is. They don't have the awareness to do all of it, or both. The balance.
Right, Yeah, I'm hoping that, I don't know, it's going to go away. That would be nice.
Well, track your menstrual cycle. Start with that.
I've definitely been having some things for a few months, and then all of a sudden it seems like it took a turn for just muscle fatigue. It's not really mental fatigue or whole body. It's weak muscles or whatever.
Yeah, you could be lacking protein. I mean, who freaking knows?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to experiment a bit and then see.
Maybe you're iron deficient.
And I'll go get a blood test or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is where if you can just, do you see the difference between my life sucks, I'm tired, everything is wrong, how different your response is? It takes the pressure off of the solution.
I'm really glad that I went through what I did before finding out that because that would have been.
Oh my God, you would have been worse. Like, it's all the food, it's the food.
Basket case. But I'm not. Yeah, so, but definitely have, as far as everything with the body image, that seems like it's going pretty good for me. So.
Awesome. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing.
It's been pretty cool. Yes, it really is. Like, when you finally get past whatever kind of, it's like the victim persecutor thing, and then just seeing, like, starting to see duality for what it is, that whole thing or whatever.
Well, just that your misery or the victim position comes from your beliefs. Like, if you could remove those beliefs, this whole victim suffering, because it is suffering, goes away.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe those things. You don't have to hold life to that subjective form of thought.
It's kind of like you're drowning in a 3-foot pool and somebody just tells you,
get up.
Just stand up.
I know.
Just stand up, man.
No, there's nothing underneath me.
You're flailing. But when you're there, I mean, I get it.
It's real.
You know, you really are.
Well, for some people, they have to realize I'm going to die.
Get it.
Yeah, I'm going to drown either way.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do what I'm told. And then you're like, oh my God, I almost drowned because I wasn't willing to put my feet down. Because I felt like I was going to get sucked under. Another way to describe it is you're standing at a cliff and people are like, just jump, and you're like, you can swear to God that thing is you're going to fall to your death, and it's going to be a horrible fall to your death.
Yep.
And the only way to move is to jump. So the only way to do it is to accept you're going to die. Similar. And then you jump, and all the mist that was covering it, it's like, oh my God, there's nothing here. There's no cliff. It was like an inch.
Because I know for me, especially with the homeschool and just the whole way I was living my life before, one of my biggest fears was that I was going to end up in a mental institution, that I just wasn't going to be able to get out of this. So I actually had to face that fear to actually make the change, and that was immediately before we even started talking. I had to actually and I thought my life was over, like, completely. It was done. My life is over,
Yeah.
And then I realized, it didn't kill me. I'm actually doing way better than I ever did before.
And I could handle that. I did that. I handled it. That's that's a big deal, because it's like all it took was courage. And it doesn't mean courage to get what you want. It's courage that even if the whole thing fails, there's a courage to accept what happens versus
to just let go.
Yeah, versus having faith that it'll work out the way you want it. This is is different. This is like it's like courage without any sense of capacity. There is no capacity. It's like I literally go in limp. And I have the courage to let whatever happens happen.
Right, even if it means the worst thing that you thought could happen.
My husband's going to reject me. I'm going to be alone. My children will turn their backs on me. Your courage, there's a level of courage that just sitting there creates capacity. Just laying there and doing nothing. It's like the courage in and of itself is what's required to give the capacity, right? It's like all it took was courage to put your feet down in that 3-foot water.
Yeah.
And the strength to stand up existed.
Right.
But it took courage to do that, right?
Yeah, it takes immense amounts of courage when you're in it, but then, and I think part of it is that faith. Like, I guess you have to or I don't even know if it's faith. I don't know
acceptance.
What it is. You just have to let it go, and you just...
It's acceptance.
Go.
Acceptance, even if it means death, complete dying.
Yeah.
Because that's where I had to go, too. Because the physical manifestation, when you said it's like it feels like you're going to die.
Yeah.
Physically, it manifests heart palpitation, hair standing up. The whole entire fight or flight mechanism is on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Shrink, do something, and you're flailing and you're fatiguing, and you can tell you're going to die. And it feels like the Grim Reaper is breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
And if you stop, it's certainly going to kill you.
I was already like, okay, this one's going here, this one's going to go there.
Yeah.
Because Mom has gonna step off deep end. I'm stepping off right now. And
well, the thing is too, when you're in that position, when you're in that state of mind, you can tell you're losing your mind. You can feel it. It's like I can't breathe and I can't continue. And that's why people, if they reach for alcohol or they reach for substance or they get, they end up that's why they end up losing their life. Yeah. With substance abuse, because that's a way to pause that feeling for 2 seconds. And that's why people diet. That was your way of trying to escape, thinking this will fix it.
I was a severe dieter before, even though there was like other issues going on. I definitely was doing the keto HCG yo-yo.
Oh God! Oh, it's so maddening. Well, and the thing is, people think that it's so righteous, but that's a whole other topic, right? Those are people that are trying to stay afloat with all of these, and they don't realize their whole life is disabled. All of the life you have is completely disabled. You might be able-bodied, but your mind and your soul are completely paralyzed by all these mechanisms that you have to do just to float. You don't even go anywhere.
Right.
It doesn't improve.
And I think, too, that's why it depends, like, different people's bodies might be different. Like, one person may have a decent liver who can handle this, like, keto HCG yo-yo, let's just say, for longer. So they can now prolong their insanity, let's say. And somebody else may not or whatever. And so they have to come to terms with their condition sooner. Like, I do feel like to some degree, like, because some people it's like, well, how come it works for some and it doesn't work for others? But we each have different things, you know. Maybe somebody's been around like pesticides, or this other person has like herpes virus or something. You never know. Everybody's different.
Yeah, everybody's different. But the idea that it works for what? Thin supremacy?
Right. Then it's right to continue.
So with insanity. That said, someone it works for is still in paralysis. They have to do all of that work just to fit a condition around the body that is self-centered around the body. They don't have freedom. So they can sit here and say, it works for me, but does it work for the freedom of the mind? No, you're still self-centered and fixated on the conditions of your thinness.
Right.
And all the mechanisms of restriction that it requires to pretend that you're happy, because you're not.
Yeah. It almost is a blessing. I mean, it is a blessing, I guess, if you do happen to have, for some reason, it didn't work for you and you had to come to terms with it.
Well, what if it does work for you, but it requires obsessive compulsiveness? And eventually you're treading water and you're fatiguing and you cannot do it any longer. It's working. You're thinner, but your whole life is held hostage by what you have to do to avoid the public because the food out there is too tempting.
Right.
You know, and all of the micromanagement that goes into making sure all of the food is in its little cubbies so that you can pretend like you're happy and take snapshots and put it on your social media so that people see that you're doing the greatest job ever. I mean, so you see how it's like, even if it's working,
right, you're still
fixated. You're still limited through the constraints of that subjective concept and everything it requires, so that you can go to the beach and be self-centered about your working body versus about the beach.
Right. So compassion, forget that.
It's just like,
forget it.
What's it working for? Thin supremacy. It's like, so is... Yeah, bigger picture. Come out and look at the forest. Come back 5 steps, even from where you were just at.
It is amazing how... The whole thing is,
Well, it's like survival mechanism. The whole brain is made to hone in on what is threatening. And that's the simplicity of it. It's like, what is it working for? What your brain is honed in on? That's not working to me because you don't have freedom. You're honed in on it. Even if the body meets the conditions, you're still in fight or flight survival mode, crazy train. And I have compassion for that. If only you knew. If only you could be aware of how miserable you are inside your safety. You're safe. But man, it's so limiting. You're so limited by that safety. What progress occurs inside safety? You got to go outside of the safety zone, you know, and to do that would require you're willing to gain some weight. Or on the binge eating side, it would require you're willing to experience life without food and not expect weight loss as a reward. The reward must be the access to life without the condition of the body being involved in it, because life occurs whether you're 400 pounds right now. You're experiencing this video, you're hearing it, you have the possibility, you have all of the access to witness life if you would just accept the body the way it is. But that would require you accept life the way you're witnessing it as it is as well. So by saying that shouldn't happen that way, you're literally constraining your opportunity to witness it, because you're telling life and arguing with the way it should be as if you're God. Whether you're morbidly obese as a binge eater telling life that it was bad and you're victimized and life is horrible, or you're on the other side of anorexia, avoiding that, trying to fix it, making it better than it really is in your mind. You're not free.
Yeah.
You have to give up the thinness and you have to give up the food. You have to be willing to witness life as it is objectively to the best of your awareness, right?
It is. It's like it's got so many moving parts, and everybody's unique as far as what their particular situation is. So that's another thing that, you know, everybody has to take into account.
Well, yeah, what they're bringing to the table, you know, how many experiences have they perceived a certain way? So the truth is that we're not really unique. That's the truth. The uniqueness is what we're holding on to what degree, to what depth, right? Because we're all human.
Yeah.
For the most part, we all are raised to believe the same dogma at this point. We're in the same culture. Right? The culture we're raised in is primarily narcissistic. So you see the predictability in all of it.
Right.
So are we really unique? Or is that just a way to separate ourselves?
Yeah, like our story.
Yes, exactly. Is that our subjective uniqueness?
Right.
Or are we all the goddamn same?
Yep.
Which is how you have compassion.
Yeah, so whether it's somebody who, you know, loses a loved one, or somebody who's been physically abused, or there's an injury.
Still traumatic relative to their perception. Totally. It's hard.
Yeah.
You know, I remember coming out of my eating disorder and having that clear awareness, like, oh my gosh, so someone who goes to Vietnam and has terrible PTSD, I experienced PTSD being a sexual assault victim, but because I judged it because of the religion, so no matter what, it's still the same manifestation of PTSD.
Right.
So what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, the relative context around what promotes it. Either way, the end result was the same.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. So, yeah, that makes sense, because then
I can have compassion for someone who went to Vietnam.
Compassion and understand.
Because I can understand my own. I don't have to go, well, my experience was less than theirs, so therefore my PTSD wasn't like theirs. It's unique to me. No, it's the same, because we're human. We have the same brain. We have similarity. You know, there's evolution of our responses. You know, so we're all the same. It's just,
yeah.
it's like, but the difference
if you
is...
then take compassion, then that's like a weird narcissistic view to be like, well, I have more compassion for you because, you know.
Because it's different. Because you're different. Yeah. No, we're not. You know, we're all pretty much the same. The difference is kind of where we're at, all the, you know, the accumulated experience, how we perceive things. You know, if you really look at it from a view of consciousness, we're all the same relative to our state of consciousness. So it's not even...
Oh, right.
Yeah. So... Yeah. You know, the only uniqueness is the uniqueness of the levels of consciousness that we're in. And that has that's not personal. That's not personal uniqueness. That's ego.
Yeah. I think I read that in David Hawkins' book because I actually bought his entire collection of books.
Oh,
I was like,
so
you know
amazing.
what? I'm reading David Hawkins.
He's amazing. Yeah, that would be like saying my consciousness level is mine.
Yeah, so he says, like, if you're on like a certain frequency, you pretty much have about the same thoughts as everybody else on that frequency.
So are you really unique? Are you special? Right. You know, is my awareness, is my recovery unique to me, or is it unique to the process of raising my level of consciousness, which is really my level of consciousness, or just being open to a level of consciousness? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So it's like, you know, the process that someone goes through to let go of their subjective idea of life. That might be unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It is. When I think of how far I've come and just my family in general, I mean, I'm very happy with how the house is running. Everybody's, you know, everything's great. And it was polar opposite from where I was, you know, 6 months ago.
I am curious as to what your husband thinks now, because he thought you were a sheeple of mine.
Yeah, well, he is extremely supportive, and he's, you know, kind of, he's been great.
He can tell the difference.
Our relationship is good. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's been just awesome.
So he had had to go through his own willingness to surrender.
He did.
Yeah, and to just let it happen, even though in his mind I was brain controlling you or brainwashing you. He thought I was brainwashing you.
He's actually done a 180 almost the same as I have in his own way. He was, you know, the controlling, like his mind,
it was similar.
Anyway,
it was similar.
And now he's definitely a 180. So we can both kind of laugh about our 180 turn or whatever. But
oh, well, that is awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And that's probably why the marriage is still working, right?
Yeah. He definitely did go through a big change as well. And he had to, because when I stood up for what I needed and it was a big conflict, he was going to have to make a choice. And so he made a choice, but not to be stubborn in his ways, I suppose, or whatever.
Well, and he had to be okay. He had to allow things to be the way they were. That took courage for him, even though his fear brain was like giving him all sorts of messages. He had to just allow it to be without controlling it from the fear message, you know. That's amazing.
He didn't really tell me a lot. Like, I don't think I knew as much of what he was going through. So he was making his own decisions because I was going through my own, I guess, version. So he wasn't like super vocal about all the choices he made, but he would just show up and it was obvious, you know, he's made this choice, or he'd say or whatever, depending on what it was. But
I'm excited for your kids. I am so excited for them.
They are doing so much better. It's amazing. I am too.
Yeah.
Just little things. I mean, everybody's well taken care of right now. So it makes my mama heart happy.
Yes, and you can relax.
See everybody. Yeah. So, and it's funny, the only thing for me is like, because even I had kind of given up on the church thing a while ago, and then, but I had a homeschool community. So then it's like, it's hard to find community when you don't want to pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah, it is. Totally. It's super.
Actually kind of weird, because I'm like, well, if I go with this group, it's like everybody's got this persona, and I'm like, can I just like meet people?
Yeah, and just be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So, and then the one friend of mine who we commiserated, I guess, a bunch, or I was definitely an ear for her, she kind of dropped off the radar, which we had been friends for a really long time, but it doesn't surprise me because I guess we're not in the same place. I'm not really sure, but.
Well, and those are the things you have to face to recover. You have to accept that the way you were established relationships under those conditions. If you remove the conditions, if the way you were is changing, the people that want you to be that way are going to go away. And that could be your husband. It could be your parents. It could be, because you have to be willing to just be the truth. What is the real truth of you? And if they don't like the real truth in its innocence, they'll remove themselves.
Yeah.
The only way for you to maintain that relationship would be for you to play the role you were playing. And sometimes to recover, you have to stop playing those roles. If people truly love you unconditionally, they will accept you in the truth. Because the thing is, they accepted you that way ahead of time. They didn't necessarily, And to be honest with you, by being real with who you are and just allowing that to be, you're giving them the opportunity to experience true love. Because it's like with my mom and how I related to her. By just being me and just separate from the religion, it allows her to witness the true me and allows her to love outside of the religion, which she has that choice whether she wants to or not. That's like your husband. The willingness and allowance for him to really know that he loves who you are, not the conditions that he needs you to be. That removes the codependency, the selfishness, the self-centeredness that he might have been getting out of that role prior. And it just, what I love about this is that it just removes the ego. It removes the pretentiousness and the whole facade. And it's like, and we can, and the humility of just like, here we are, like our realness. It takes away the fake and the work, and it allows you to be a humble person, a humble human being in the essence of the truth, rather than having to pretend to be something better than that. It's like, why pretend to be better than that when it's fake? The truth is you're not. You're human. You're flawed.
Yeah.
And why feel bad about that? I think it's, if we want to talk about health, it's healthy to recognize you're flawed. It would be unhealthy to pretend you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how David Hawkins says how humans can't tell the difference really between truth and falsehood. It's one of our biggest downfalls.
Yeah.
So we're gullible.
Yeah. And you don't know it until you're suffering.
Yep. Until you've already had to learn the lesson.
You got it.
So.
You got it. And that's where it's like you live in continuous surrender. You live in, because in the end, when you make decisions, you really don't know. You're just open to what happens, right? And that's where what I've been able to practice is accept the worst case scenario that you're aware of. Open yourself up to the vulnerability of possibility, and if your integrity is aligned, you don't mean harm. It's not self-centered. Then what do you have to lose besides ignorance, unawareness, naivety,
Yep. Yeah. And then the whole, I think, acceptance of death, you're like, hey, what is my time is my time.
Yeah.
So
this body has a period of time that it's going to provide me this focal point to witness life. And when that focal point ends, my witness eye, that third eye of awareness, is going to move on. The body doesn't own that. It just owns it's like a vortex of awareness in this space. Oh my God. Now we're getting all
I
like,
know.
Oh, what
Far
is mine?
Far out. But yeah, so yep, it's been good. So maybe I have to work a little bit on figuring out. I'll probably see like an endocrinologist or whatever they're called.
Yeah, get some blood work done and just get feedback.
Whatever.
Yeah, just get feedback. I just, way I would do it is, here are my symptoms. I'm not sure if it's, the fact that I just moved and I've just gone through a real hard, I'm coming off of years of this fight or flight response.
Right.
Make sure you're,
so
and
body could just be adjusting.
Tired. Yeah, you just need to maybe listen to it,
Yeah.
Give it a break for a second. You have your whole life, if given the great fortune of it, to enjoy what's going on. You don't necessarily have to force anything. Maybe instead of cardio, you do yoga. Just focus on yoga for the moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm just gonna do. Smaller increments.
Yeah, and as you feel better, you expand that capacity.
Yeah.
You don't overreach right now just because you think you have to for whatever reason.
Yeah. So, and it was more of a recent turn, too, because for a while I was actually doing okay, but then...
Well, you're coming off survival mode. You're coming off of it.
Yeah, so that's true. Maybe
it's kind of like, it's harvest and it's winter months. Maybe you need to, literally we're in that stage, but your body's going into winter months. Like, chill.
Yeah.
Yoga, meditation.
Go to the beach.
Yeah, just to be the observer instead of the creator for once. Just witness instead of manipulate the environment, That'll come maybe later.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe you need more sun. Who knows? But if you want, go get the information, but see it as information. Sometimes if you go to the doctor and expect a diagnosis and expect a solution, they're getting forced into making decisions. All you got to be able to say is, I'm just having some symptoms. I just want an overall look at everything. I don't need to fix anything, but I want to get a look at what's going on. I've done that.
Yeah. Because I feel like doctors kind of do the trendy train thing. Like in the 50s, like women were crazy. And then now it's maybe your thyroid.
Women are crazy. It's true.
Women
you need to be sedated. Let's sedate you with some cigarettes and a Quaalude.
Because you have everything, so how could you possibly not feel good?
Anyway, all right, well, let's schedule to follow up.